The book took 4.5 to 4.5 months to put together.
I wouldn't recommend doing that to anyone.
No. But when it came in the mail,
oh man, tears.
It's
Uncontrollable
quite an achievement.
tears. Yeah, it's incredibly gratifying. And you know, what's been really neat is I traveled much of last fall around the country in both coastal cities as well as in the interior of the country. And you know, what has been most gratifying is having the conversations with people and talking about this. Everybody comes to this from a very different place. I actually think whether or not you eat meat, this is one of the big conversations we're having around food right now. And you know, I talked about earlier, you know, only 4% of Americans, you know, don't eat meat or describe themselves that way. Well, if you're among the 96% of Americans who do eat meat, chances are you love someone who, you know, it's sort of like there's more integration. There's no longer the lone outcast at Thanksgiving table who doesn't eat the turkey. We're now truly eating in mixed company. So you're also finding people falling in love with one another who, you know, Valerie the vegetarian meets Mr. I can't live without my sausages. And then what do they do at the end of the day at the table? So that's what I call the mixed diet relationship.
Interesting.
You know, and we're finding that this is becoming more in the new normal. And, you know, the teenage son wakes up and says, Mom and Dad, I'm not eating ribs anymore. I'm becoming a vegetarian. And I'm hearing this more and more, and that's especially on the road. And so, again, like, this is a book that helps bridge that gap. And that has been so gratifying, is like people are using it and finding it really helpful.
Well, you're a writer and you go on the road promoting your book. You must take away a lot of different stories, as you said. Mm-hmm. So do you hit the computer on the plane or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of that. The stories haven't been compiled in any formal sort of way, but that has been one of the overriding themes, is that there's a tremendous interest in dietary shift in this country, but you know, there's a lot of standing still and say, okay, what do I do? How do I do this? I'm a little scared. This might, you know, turn my pantry upside down. This, you know. Well, Americans don't really like change.
You know, that's it. And you hit upon that. And the other thing is, we're inundated with milk. Milk, and meat. And you were talking about the portions of the plate. Well, let's face it, a big factor of that is these lobbying corporations which want to sell more chicken instead of selling beef. And the beef sellers want to sell beef. And then milk. I consider milk something for baby cows. And I go into the grocery store and you've got almond milk, coconut milk. They've really expanded this thing from soy milk to rice milk. Mm-hmm. I just bought some coconut milk. It was interesting. I love coconuts. It wasn't as coconutty as I would hope it would be.
Right, it's not.
Have you tried?
You've tried? I actually like it because it's not coconutty. Like that it can be used as an alternative to dairy.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Like, I know what you mean. I mean, there's the canned coconut milk, which will have the very intense coconut flavor, but the packages that you're finding in the cold area in the supermarkets, it's very faint, and then it allows you to use it as a seamless alternative, you know, to dairy milk.
Interesting. So the coconut milk, I would imagine that coconut, almond, if people can eat nuts, that this stuff must have really good properties to it.
Yeah, I mean, I use the coconut milk a lot because it is rich, you know, in flavor, and it doesn't feel like I have substituted anything, and there's no cholesterol issues. So
because of coconut.
Because it's plant-based. I mean, certainly there's fat, but it's good fat, and so I really like it. I'm not a fan of soy milk. Almond milk, I'm okay on. I don't really drink a lot of milk anyway, just pour it in a glass. I would actually use it more in baking or cooking if I, you know, but I think it's great that there are alternatives to
Oh, yeah.
dairy milk. You know, it's just giving people more options.
Well, as the beef company is in competition with soy burgers, the soy burgers are expensive compared to buying hamburger. And
Well, that has to do with subsidies.
does it?
Yeah.
Oh, I never even thought of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's much more complicated than that. But, you know, meat is, you know, there's a reason why it's so inexpensive to walk into McDonald's and get dinner for $4, and maybe that would be the same price as buying a head of broccoli in the supermarket and not covering the entire meal for 4 people. And it has a lot to do with the way that our system is set up. So, of course, you know, if you're trying to feed your family and you only have X number of dollars, you know, the priority is calories in rather than what are the nature of the calories.
And that's not good.
No.
But people are becoming aware. Even McDonald's, you walk in and they have the nutrients now, and they're very conscious of it, and that people are watching them. Heck, before I came over here, Rupert Murdoch's on TV. I'm watching people watching him now,
Right.
and it's just we're in a difficult time where big business dictates. So a book like yours is innovative, and big business should pick it up and say, you know, well, Da Capo has. But, you know, the big business, the meat people, and say, you know, this is really something that our industry should have in addition to meat.
Well, you know what's exciting is that there is big business picking up on this idea. The idea of Meatless Monday, for example, Sodexo, the big food service provider in hospitals and universities, they actually implemented a Meatless Monday program in 900 hospital cafeterias around the country.
A lot of hospitals.
They also, Meatless Monday is now in Toyota headquarters here in this country, the Department of Interior. There are school districts around the country that are now, you know, having a meatless option, you know, 1 day a week. And you're seeing more of this is becoming more and more of the mainstream. And I'll tell you something, like just 6 or 7 months ago, there was some market research done about American familiarity with the terms Meatless Monday, and at that point it was 30%, which is actually pretty substantial.
That's very good.
But in those 6 months, that recognition has gone up to 50%. So now that half of Americans actually are familiar with this phrase Meatless Monday, which is really amazing.
Now, is there interactivity with your Twitter and with your KimO'Donnell.com?
Well, I mean, people can reach out to me, absolutely. I do social media. I have a Facebook page. You know, when I'm not traveling, I do share information that is of interest to me as it relates to my work or the book. And I'm happy to interact with folks that way. And my website has more info about me and the work I've done over the years. And
Do you have outtakes of recipes that didn't make the book?
no, I don't. Because there's a bunch of recipes that I'm still tinkering with. But I'll give you an example of one that it was that, oh crap moment, and you know, what am I going to do with this? And what I did was, there was I wanted to do a stuffed eggplant with lentils, and it was so unattractive. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? The filling is so delicious. So I actually just scrapped the eggplant shell that had turned gray rather than stay purple. And I just thought that would be really disappointing to somebody at home. And so instead, I now smear it on big slabs of toasted, like hunky, you know, thick bread. And it's terrific. So you get the best of both worlds. You get your big piece of bread, you get that lentil and eggplant, roasted garlic, lemon. It's totally delicious. But that's just one example of like, okay, you know, this is great, but it's not very pretty. What am I going to do? And that was very close to turning in my manuscript.
We've got 6 or 7 minutes left. This would be very interesting in different languages. Have you thought of it? Other countries outside of like Australia or Britain, where people know the English language, a Russian version of the Meatless.
Guess maybe I ought to hire you. You can talk to my publisher.
It's just a
Broker the deal, Joe.
It's just a cool idea.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
the
you.
Russian version of,
Yeah.
because you could end up with 100 different country versions of it with different ingredients.
Well, the way that things are going right now, that could, I mean, English, the English-speaking countries of the world, so Australia, Britain, South Africa, New Zealand, those are the countries where you are actually seeing, where people eat a lot of meat. But now with these emerging economies like China, India, there's going to be more of a need for this kind of book. So, who
And
knows?
South America is a big continent
America,
to conquer.
Brazil. Mm-hmm.
Now, do you have a favorite recipe you'd like to read?
Read?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to read a little bit from the intro?
Sure.
Okay.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, sure.
We like our authors to read on visual radio.
Sure, happy to. All right. So there's a picture of me in the intro sitting in a high chair in 1967, me and my T-bone steak.
Cute.
My mom used to give them to me as teething rings. So this is how the intro, and this is actually the story of how this whole thing got going. Life begins with steak, at least mine did. See Exhibit A on the right. That's me documented in gloriously greasy detail in this Polaroid circa 1967. Instead of a teething ring, my mother gave me a T-bone to gum on. I was hooked. Back in the day, meat was what we had for dinner and lunch and breakfast, with applesauce as a vegetable. My love for the bone was unbounded and soon expanded to poultry, fried chicken in particular. It's what I insisted on for my 7th birthday party. I later used it to seduce the man who would become my husband, lest you think the story ends on the vegetarian side of the tracks. But in the 1980s, my father's and paternal grandmother's fatal heart attacks brought an end to our family's meat marathon. Alarmed by our dangerously high cholesterol levels, the doctors insisted on it. My mother did a clean sweep of the pantry. We went cold turkey on cold cuts. We switched from butter to margarine, as if we knew better then. Full fat became skim milk, and to my great horror, no more bacon and eggs. It was hell. Our family's all or nothing approach showed no understanding of eating in moderation. The pent-up cravings exploded a few years later when I was in college. I tossed aside the doctor's advice and renewed my relationship with an old friend, the pepperoni pizza. As a college grad, my budding interest in the kitchen literally fanned the flames, and I maintained a meat-heavy diet, adding a few new recipes from such books as the New Basics Cookbook by Julie Rosso and Sheila Lukens. When I needed a good rationalization for my meat-eating ways, I looked at my roommate, Kat, who called herself a vegetarian, yet lived on potatoes, grilled cheese sandwiches, and ice cream. How healthy could that be? As this bone-gnawing baby can attest, I truly understand what it means to have a one-track appetite, to believe in your heart and soul that there is nothing else for dinner but meat, that a meatless meal may happen now and then, but can never really satisfy. I'm not alone. Americans eat more than 200 pounds of meat per capita a year. But my experiences have taught me to understand that if I succumb to every craving for crispy-coated, buttermilk-infused chicken thighs, well, eventually I'll look like a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade balloon. Exactly what inspired this meat lover to write a meatless cookbook came from an unexpected source, my mother's sausage-loving, longtime companion.
Wow. It's very, very well written.
Thank you.
The website is kimodonnell.com, and the Twitter, I've got a Twitter account.
Oh, well, I'll have to follow you.
When I write a story, I just wrote a story on the band Deep Purple.
Uh-huh.
Their first 3 albums came out, and I'm like totally into that, especially the song Hush. So I put the production, you get me on that tangent, and I put it up on the Twitter, and I'll put it up on my Facebook. I just like to get them out there.
Sure. I mean, it's a great way to share your knowledge, your writing, your work. I mean, that's one of the great things about social media.
But I don't live on Twitter. I live more on Facebook. I don't. A lot of people are like Twitter
I think
Twitteraholics.
one friend described it really well to me, that Twitter is like your front porch
Ah,
and Facebook is like your living room.
okay.
So the drive-by porch, 140 characters on Twitter, the longer character count, the more sort of relaxed in the easy chair on Facebook. It's actually an interesting thought.
It is. And you're at Kim O'Donnell.
I am.
Yeah, with 2 N's and 1 L.
2 N's, 1 L.
We're at Visual Radio 1.
All right.
It's very simple. And, you know, the science fiction convention, it went right up on the,
Yeah.
you know, I wrote that up right away because it was fun. I mean, you know, being around all these authors. It's
Right.
great hearing your story because an author has achieved something that not everyone has the patience to do. Visual Radio, July 19th. Kim O'Donnell, thank you so much for being on the air.
Thanks so much for having me.
And that's our show for today.
Another minute, another